Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is MG Govey. I'm the Education and Outreach Liaison here at Okie 811. Today we have an important topic to talk about. As most of you know, our Oklahoma Underground Damage Prevention Act is being updated effective November 1st. And so we're going to go over that information today, and I'll go into more detail in just one moment. Because of the attendance on this one, there's a lot of new faces, a lot of new names I haven't seen before. I do want to remind everybody how to use the interface. If you are new to GoToWebinar, you'll notice an orange arrow on your interface. If it disappears on you or you need to hide it, just click that orange arrow. It opens and closes your interface. Feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation. My Robin, to me being Batman, is Lois, and she'll be helping us out in the questions section. And if there's anything that comes up, feel free to ask her. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll make sure to go over all of those to make sure everybody finds out. Because if you have the question, probably someone else does as well. So with that, let's dive into it. Just a reminder, the law has been around since 1982. It was put into legislation then, and so there's been quite a few updates in the last couple of years to try to make it where it is more beneficial when it comes to the communication between our excavators and those who operate or own underground facilities. So the backbone of the entire law, the Oklahoma Underground Facilities Damage Prevention Act, is these two phrases. One, that all operators shall participate with us in the notification center. And so what that means for our operators is that they have to register their assets with us, and they have to let us know what personnel to contact when digging is going to take place near those registered assets. And for that to work, we need anyone who's going to be doing any digging to let us know no more than 10 days or less than 48 hours, including the date of notification, weekends, and holidays before that excavation is going to begin. So being able to plan that excavation, letting our member companies know is at the beginning of that communication point. And of course, OK11, our role is to be that communication between the operators and the excavators. So with the law updates, it's going to take place on November 1st. OK11 is also going to add 2 procedure changes. And the reason I want to point these out to you is because you're not going to see them day to day, but they do make a difference in what's going to take place. And I have some examples to show you that. One is going to be the reduction of the worksite buffer. Trust me, I have an example to explain how that's going to affect things. And then the default start time of a ticket is going to be midnight. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm not going to go over all the different changes that are going to go effective on November 1st, but I am going to talk about those that are exclusive to the excavator. So we're going to talk about the life of the ticket, which is going to be 14 calendar days. We're going to talk about mandatory positive response. We're going to explain each role in that, our members, the excavators, and how to respond or see the response, and then OK11's role in that as well. And then we're going to go over the excavator responsibilities around pipelines and their ticket use. So let's first talk about that procedure change about the dig site polygon or dig site area. So I'm going to fast forward through this to show you 3 different member companies' service areas. So when you're looking at this, you can see that there's a pipeline here with 500 feet buffer on either side of it, a well that also has a 500-foot buffer around it, and then a company that's registered by quarter sections. So it would be their service areas. This is how they register their assets with us. And so anytime digging is going to take place within those areas, they'll receive a locate request to respond to. Currently, when a dig site polygon is drawn by our CSRs, that's a customer service representative, when they draw that dig site polygon, we also add a 300-foot buffer in all directions around that dig site polygon. The reason being is when this best practice was developed, over 70% of our locate requests were done over the telephone. That means we were literally playing the telephone game with our excavators trying to determine where their work is going to take place. And to compensate for any discrepancy of distance or misunderstanding, we wanted to make sure that we were going to notify all the companies that may be affected by that excavation project. So now we receive over 70% of all of our locate requests through our website. And with the mapping being available to the excavator and improved mapping on our members' side as well. Our company has decided that it is in the best interest to reduce the dig site buffer from 300 feet to 150 feet. So in this example, at 300 feet, the well, the pipeline, as well as that company that's registered by quarter section would all receive a locate request. Starting in November, we're reducing that to 150 feet, and now only the pipeline and the quarter section company would receive a ticket. That well would no longer do so. So what does that mean for the excavator? We need to know that your work area is exact and accurate. So when you're working with the mapping on our website, be sure to mark exactly where you're going to be working, understanding there is not a great um, uh, leeway in where you could be right or wrong. We want you to be as right as possible so that the correct companies are being notified. And when talking to us on the telephone, realize how important it is that we have those driving directions, that we do understand where the work is going to be taking place, because now that margin of error is reduced because we understand the mapping side of it is so much better. So we just need to make sure that the communication side of it still stays strong, and so that we're not over notifying companies that are not receiving relevant locate requests. So now that that's been explained, let's talk about the ticket life real quick. Prior to November 1st, we have been interpreting your ticket life as 10 days, 10 business days. And the reason being is because of the notification period. You're to give notice no less than 2 days and no more than 10 days, not including the date of notification, weekends, and holidays. What has happened is that the legislation that has reviewed the law has decided to define the ticket life more black and white. And so now notice shall expire 14 calendar days from the excavation start date. And so your ticket does not begin until the work to begin date and time, and you cannot excavate after the 14th day unless an update has been made. And so I do have a quick illustration on that as well. On that, luckily for all of us, November 1st falls on a Monday this year, so it'll be very easy to show you. So if someone calls in on the 1st to put in their request, this is the request date. And you're to give no more than 10 business days, nor less than 48 hours, not including date of notification. So date of notification doesn't count, 24 hours, 48 hours, work to begin date. You will be on our website, you'll be asked when your work is going to begin. When you're on the telephone, you're going to be asked when the work is going to begin. So this begin date can be anywhere from midnight, excuse me, time. The time on the work to begin date could be anywhere from midnight to 11 o'clock at night, whenever the digging is going to take place. And then your work to begin date and time will be when your ticket begins. And this is day one, right? There's a shovel. We are now working on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So on the 14th calendar day, that ticket expires at midnight. So from the work to begin date, you notice that we went through the holidays, Veterans Day, and we went through the weekends. It's 14 calendar days, the end. Ticket's done at midnight on the 17th. If you are going to continue working through the 17th, you'll need to update your ticket. And you'll need to update your ticket 2 business days plus the date of notification prior to when the update needs to continue. So looking at your calendar, we know you want to continue working on the 18th. So 17th doesn't count, 16th doesn't count, so you would need to update the ticket on the 15th. Good news, everybody. You do not have to have a calendar when you're putting in your locate request. Our system will give you all the dates on every ticket that you provide to us. We're going to let you know when your work to begin date and time is based on what the information you gave us. We're going to tell you when to update it if it's going to take longer than the 14 calendar days, and we will give you the expiration date of your ticket if you plan on being finished prior to the 14 calendar days. But we wanted to show you this example so you can understand that. Another thing to keep in mind is when you make your request, you can actually give us more than just the 2 business days. If on the 1st you say, you know what, I'm not going to be digging until the 9th, the only thing that changes from there would be the work to begin date changes to the 9th, and then you count your 14 days from the 9th and update accordingly if work isn't going to be done. Okay. Again, I just wanted to show you a quick calendar to kind of break it down black and white, but you can always trust the dates and times that we're going to put on your ticket so that you can see that. Okay. So now to dive into mandatory response. So mandatory response is a clear communication of status of processing the locate request to the excavators so that the excavator can confirm response prior to doing an excavation. Okay. So our member companies are responsible for providing that status out to you. And so what they're going to do is as they locate, they're going to be able to log in. They're going to see the locate request that is sent to them, and then they will be able to respond with the status. That status is either going to be all clear, or that the lines are marked, or that there was access issues and that you'll need to resubmit a ticket, things of that nature. Okay. There is not every way to respond back to the member companies by the excavator, but I'll explain a little bit more about that here in just a moment. So the members are always going to respond to these locate requests. They provide status of that locate. And the law spells it out for all three parts of the communication. So first of all is the members, that they shall provide part of the response prior to the expiration of the required notice period, right? So they have to let the excavator know prior to the work to begin date and time. And then for the excavator, the law spells out their responsibility as well, that an excavator must check for positive response through the notification center prior to excavation or demolition to make sure that they've all been marked. So what you'll do is you'll pull up your ticket, you'll be able to see, and right now our positive response is voluntary. So there's quite a few companies that are already doing it. You probably have seen it on your locate request. And so you can see, hey, the site's been marked or it's clear. And then when a company isn't participating, you'll see the phrasing about the company not providing positive response through our service, and they should communicate with you directly. And that's when it is voluntary. But starting on November 1st, there isn't an option anymore. It is mandatory, and to be compliant with the law, they must provide positive response. If a company has not enrolled into the positive response system, then we will remind you by showing it on your ticket every time that this company is not compliant with the Oklahoma Underground Damage Facility Act and it's not providing positive response through us. So when you see that, they should be reaching out to you directly in the meantime until they get registered with us to be able to provide that positive response. And then on your end, if you have not seen a response from a company, you can put in a second notice. So let me explain the second notice for just a moment, and then we'll move on. So with the positive response, once all companies have provided a positive response prior to your work to begin date and time, the excavator will receive an email that says all companies responded. You may begin digging on your work to begin date and time. And so that will give you the information that you need on that. The other thing that you need to know is 5 hours prior to your work to begin date and time, if there is a company that has not responded through positive response, you'll receive an email that lets you know that what companies have responded and what companies have not responded so that you can put in a second notice even prior to going to the work site. Okay. I do want to remind you of those companies that are not participating in positive response. You should receive an email, a phone call. They may have put paint and flags on the ground. So if you see that a company isn't participating, you will have to go to the site so that you can see whether or not they've responded to you. But for all other companies, if somebody hasn't responded to you, you can go ahead and put in your second notice so that you can have that courtesy notification out there before going to the work site. A reminder on second notices, it is a phone call into us. We have to be able to verify with our CSRs that that positive response hasn't been provided to you and that you can put in that second notice. Second notice is not a reset. You do not have to wait another 48 hours. You can let us know that you are going to be digging within 2, 3, 5 hours, whatever the case may be, so that we can provide that courtesy notification out to them. And as always, take plenty of pictures and always hand dig and verify around the markings before you continue working in an area. So that takes care of the members and then the excavators when it comes to positive response. And then OKA 811's responsibility is to be that communication hub, and we are going to keep record of all that communication. So one of the things I pointed out a while ago is that if that there isn't a way for the excavator to communicate back to the member companies through positive response. Because what that is saying is the member company has been to the site, they've marked the site, it's clear, or there's access issues. If there's some reason that there's access issues or they made an agreement with the excavator about coming back later or anything like that, it'll be in the notes and the comments there. But if the excavator disagrees with the information that's on that ticket, they'll all need to call us at OK11 and talk to us. If it's an access issue, it'll be a new ticket. Because if there isn't an access issue already on the first ticket that says, hey, there's a dog in the backyard and meet the owner or anything like that, when the excavator comes out there, if they're not able to, or excuse me, when the locator gets out there to do the work, if they're not able to access the area, then the new ticket needs to be put in because the first ticket didn't have the correct information. Okay, so you want to make sure you're always providing the exact information so that it's clear communication out to the locators so they can get that job done. Okay, so let me jump into the other information regarding responsibility around pipelines. So if you're not familiar, the Oklahoma Corporation Commission is the enforcement agency for the Oklahoma Underground Facilities Damage Prevention Act. And there's two sections that got updated to help them out with that enforcement. Before we dive into what's new, let me remind you what's already here and the reason that you're all on this call with me. It's because the law says that anytime an excavator is going to blow up the ground or do any excavation on or near the location of underground facilities or private easement, that excavator has to notify all the operators by using the notification center. And if you do not use a notification center, then you, as an excavator, shall be responsible for any damage to the underground facilities of an operator if notification center was not notified. Okay, that's pretty black and white. I highlighted all that to kind of streamline that information, but that is currently the law. It will be the law after November 1st as well. But what they have done is they've made an emphasis around hazardous pipelines. Oklahoma Corporation Commission's enforcement is around pipelines. PHMSA is the reason for that being. And so they had to add wording to give it some legal ramifications. And this is what has come about for that. In this section, it talks about excavation or demolition cannot begin without markings around hydrocarbon and hazardous liquid pipelines. What that means is if an excavator knows that there's pipelines in this area and they can see pipeline markers, they can see what's going on in the area, but they do not call in a locate request, they can be fined. So as the law states right now, if you dig, and I hate saying this out loud, if you dig and nothing happens, nothing happens, okay? But if something does happen, you will be responsible for the damage and the repair of that area, okay? So that's the way the law is written right now. It's liability for damages. Around pipelines, it doesn't matter if a shovel's or if a shovel has hit a pipeline or anything. If any digging is taking place around a pipeline without markings, you're breaking the law. And because of that, that gives the Oklahoma Corporation Commission the ability to fine you. And the fines for the Oklahoma Underground Facilities Damage Prevention Act is $25,000 a day up to $2 million. So you do have to have markings and an actual locate request. If the markings disappear during work, if cattle eats up all the flags, if weather wipes it all out, or you haven't updated your locate request during that time, once you have no longer visible markings or your ticket is no longer active, then you can be fined. Again, it's not about damage anymore. That's the next step. But even without damage, if you're digging in the area around pipelines without markings, without a locator request, you're breaking the law. And that's the new emphasis that has been put into the law this year. And the reason for that is because of the fact that the ramifications of pipeline damage, whether it's environmental, obviously the impact on injury or possibly death, and then the pipeline company itself. So please keep that in mind when digging around pipelines. The other thing real quick that I want to talk about is fraudulent requests. This is new, and I know that I have a lot of excavators on this call today, and I want to go into this information. One is no work taking place requests, and this is where it says if excessive and unreasonable requests for markings are made by an excavator with no excavation taking place within 14 calendar days, then that excavator may be liable to the owner or operator for reasonable costs of such marking. So there's two things to keep in mind here. One, it does need to be excessive and unreasonable. So if I talked to an electric co-op company the other day, and so I'll go into that information and get that example. If they put in a locate request saying they're going to put in 5 electric poles on this stretch of road, and it should take them 5 days total, and then they are on their 4th update, which means they're in month 2 of a 5-day project, then that will be excessive and unreasonable because that means work isn't taking place within the 14 calendar days for a project that should only take 5 days. Okay, so that's a clear-cut example. The other way to look at it is if they put in a locate request and they want to get started within 14 calendar days and the area gets flooded and they're unable to work, and then they put in an update and they're able to work during the second ticket, that is reasonable. It isn't excessive, right? It makes sense. The operator won't be able to charge them for anything because the intention was to dig in the first 14 days, wasn't able to, and then they were able to in the second 14 days. So excessive and unreasonable are very big and key words in this law part. A lot of people ask about design and survey tickets, and I'm going to give an example and show you a little bit of information on that. But something to keep in mind is that the law is for excavation. It's to prevent damage through the process of excavation. We'll go into that here in just a second. Next is the non-emergency emergency request. There's two things to keep in mind when talking about non-emergency emergency requests. One is justification. The other is time frame. First one is justification. Is it truly an endangerment to life, health, or property that you have to dig earlier than 48 hours, not including the data notification? If it is, if someone's out of power, if telecommunications is down, if water is going everywhere and destroying property, all that makes sense. So it's justified, okay? If they come out and they turn out that someone's installing a new water meter or new construction is taking place, there's no life, property, or health endangerment in any way, shape, or form, then it's fraudulent based on the justification of the emergency. A lot of times where the fraudulent emergencies have happened, it's usually just poor planning. It wasn't that bad of a problem the other day, but now I need to get to it today. And so I need to get that water meter installed. And now it's an emergency, even though it wouldn't have been if I just made that phone call 3 days ago, right? So that's pretty self-explanatory on the justification. The other thing to keep in mind is time frame. An emergency locate request is the maximum amount of time that it will take before you start digging due to an emergency situation that's less than 48 hours, not including data notification. So let me break that down. If I have an emergency come up and I know that I need to repair this water, I need to get this under control, but I need a certain part, I need this certain crew, I need this certain piece of equipment, and it's going to take me 6 hours to get to it, or it's going to take me till 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to have the crew available, that's when you should tell us the start time of your project is. That gives the member companies as much time as possible so that they can get out there and protect those underground facilities. If you're not digging in 2 hours and they get out there within 2 hours and they can tell that there's no attempt on digging within that 2 hours, then that may be considered a fraudulent request because you are not digging at the time that you said you're going to. So you want to, like I said, pay attention to both justification and time frame with putting in emergency requests. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll wrap up all the mandatory responses. We'll dive into these questions. And thank you everybody who is throwing in questions. If you have any more, just keep them coming. I promise Lois and I will take care of them. So We've already received quite a few emails just because of the information that's going out about the no work taking place requests. Technically, this has been the case the entire time. The law, like I said, is worded in a way that it is designed around preventing damage from excavation. It is the Oklahoma Underground Facilities Damage Prevention Act, right? And I understand the first thing that a design team or a survey team will say is, we are trying to prevent damage eventually. Well, the digging, it needs to take place within 14 calendar days. So if excavation isn't going to take place within a locate request timeframe, then you would have to contact the facility owners directly. And the way to do that, you can go to our website, okie811.org, and then here, let me switch to it real quick. And then go to design survey request, which is under excavators, excavator resources, design survey request. And when you go to this website, you can see just how to put in the design survey request. And what that is a way to load the companies that are going to be in that work area, and you'll receive a copy of that so you can contact them directly. One thing I want to stress is that we are not transmitting any information to the facility owners or operators. It's your responsibility to contact them directly, and in that way you can see and contact their engineering, you can contact their damage prevention teams, you can talk with them on that side of the phase, because the locate request is for the excavation phase. This area is prior to excavation beginning within 14 calendar days. So just keep that in mind. Use this tool. Once you have that information, you'll be able to reach out to them and know exactly what companies are in there. And you're going to know the same companies that we know because of how the mapping is registered with us. If they're going to receive a locate request, you're going to know that they're in that area to talk to them about a design request. Okay. So before we jump back into the presentation, are there any other questions that we want to dive into? So let me look over these real quick. I'm going to unmute my friend Lois. Lois, have you had anything where you've already answered? Because I've seen so many questions coming in. So
yeah, yes, I've answered most of them. A lot of them want to know if you can send them a copy of the slideshow.
absolutely. Yes, if anybody wants a copy of this, please go ahead and shoot me an email. The word education at okie811.org is the easiest one. I think in the email, we've also given out my personal email address or direct email address. Either one's fine, but education at okie811.org, you'll be able to get this copy of. And then also, this is going to be on my YouTube channel. Well, not mine, OK811's YouTube channel by tomorrow. So you can always go to YouTube, search OK811, and be able to see the same presentation as well. And Lois, was there anything else?
Yeah, there's one more. Somebody asked, how do they know if their company is registered?
As far as to provide the positive response, so a member company?
Let me see. Let's see.
Well, let me just go both ways on that. First, let's talk about the member company. That'll be the easiest way. Our member services team has reached out to all of our member companies in a campaign to make sure that they are registered for positive response. Most member companies that use a third party like USIC, GridHawk, or others are already set up for it. If you're not using a third party and your locators do not have a clue what we're talking about when we say portal or positive response, you need to talk to our member services team as soon as possible. Check your emails. I promise you we've been reaching out to your member services contacts since February and March regarding setting up positive response. Right now, I believe we were around 80% of participation. So there is about 20% that are a little bit behind on getting compliant with the law, but we're still reaching out to you. It's easy setup. It's just an email and a login, and then all you do is jump in and go, I had these 5 requests today. It's all clear. This has been marked, whatever the case may be. So you'll be able to do that. On the excavator side, if you're curious how to, if you're signed up for positive response. Positive response is a one-way communication. So anybody can look up a ticket and see the response from the member companies. So if I put in a locate request for my property, Lois, if she had my ticket number, would be able to jump in, type in the ticket number, and see the response from the member companies on my ticket. Okay, so there is no signing up or portal registration or anything like that on the excavator side. It's information that's on the ticket that's going to be available to you, like the screenshots I shared earlier with, or if I get back to it real quick, like this one. And that's where you're going to see that. So on the excavator side, it's free. All it is type in the ticket number and go into that positive response area and seeing what is taking place. Or, like I said, you could wait until all companies have responded. You'll get that email. Or 5 hours before your work to begin date and time, you'll receive an email giving you the status of it as well. So hopefully that'll help on that. And Lois, is there anything else that I can look up?
Let's see.
I'm kind of looking through.
Yeah. Adam has a question. Ran a tool down our pipeline data. You see that one? Came back and showed a dent with a gouge.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let me run down this for. Okay, that's a great question, Adam. I'm going to kind of recap the question. It talks about liability based on damages, and the damages were discovered through an emergency and how that emergency escalated during or prior to it being marked and damages occurred. So even when an emergency locator is made, it is not a green light to damage anything. So what that means is, although I put in an emergency request, if I am digging and I damage something, then I still have to justify that I did do all due diligence in trying to protect that line. So I have to show, hey, these are where the markings are. This is where I hand dug to discover the depth, the distance, and direction of that line so that I can dig safely around it with heavier equipment. You still have to show that you're doing everything as you would with a compliant locate request. If the member company didn't have time to come out and mark their lines and you're digging because of necessity, you're taking on all risk because that member company didn't have the ability to protect that line. If you waited and the member company did mark and you did do due diligence to provide safe digging around that underground facility and damages still occur, that's when you have to go to the insurance route and find out who's at fault. Just a reminder, I say this almost in all my presentations, I do not have a law degree and I'm not pursuing one. So I do have to stress on what liability is. Liability is an understanding of what happened and did the member company do everything that is required of them to prevent the damage, and then the excavator do everything that they were required of to prevent the damage. And then the fight of who did what takes place elsewhere. So I hope that answers that. I always appreciate the liability questions, but we never ever point or target one side or the other. If they're both doing all their due diligence, then hopefully damage will be avoided and we don't even have to talk about liability anymore. And so someone wrote, and should everyone in the company have access to the portal or just a locator from the company? The locators are the ones who are going to be able to access the portal and provide that positive response. Because like I said earlier, if Lois and I start a telecom company tomorrow, and Lois is my boss and I'm the locator, and I go out and locate lines, I'm going to be the one who's communicating out to the excavator. Lois will not have that portal access, but Lois can pull up a ticket number at any time and see what I've done. Okay, so the ticket number is where you'll see the communication. The locator or the positive response portal is where that communication is going to be put out. So I hope that explains that as well. Ticket, so how often should you update the ticket? That's where the calendar comes in. Also, just a reminder, it's going to be on your tickets as well. But it's not always every 7 days or 8 days because it involves calendar days. And the notification shouldn't be more than 10 business days, nor less than 2. And so it gets a little convoluted, but that information is going to be on your ticket every single time. And like in this example, when the ticket expired on the, sorry about that, when the ticket expired on the 17th, then we know we need to continue on the 18th. And so you need to go back 3 days to update it. Okay. So, and it just depends on where that falls from the work to begin date. Because if it falls on a weekend, things of that nature, you're going to change your time. So, good to know that's going to be on your tickets. You don't have to memorize calendars. You don't have to just every 7 days, every 10 days, whatever the case may be. We're going to give that to you. So when you receive the ticket back and you see that time frame on it, throw that in your calendar for your updates if you know you're going to continue working past that time. These are some really great questions. I knew there was going to be a lot. I appreciate Lois being here to help me man all of these. Do you see anything else, Lois?
Let's see. What is the link for the positive response portal?
To access the positive response, you'll need to email my member services team. Member services team is the one who's going to set you up with it, give you a username and give you the access to the codes, because when you're positively responding, you're responding for your underground facility. We can't just blanket positive response because then you may respond for somebody else's facility or things like that. So it has to be set up through our member services team. If you haven't spoken with them, their email address is memberservices@oka11.org, or there's a contact form on our website, or shoot me an email and I'll get you over to them as well. Someone mentioned that their locators have been refusing to bring locates back to them after they locate. So, a great question, Jessica. This is an operations question. I'm always here to help with our excavators as well as our member companies. And on our member company side, if you are struggling to figure out how you want to do positive response, reach out to me. I've been working with quite a few different companies on different ways to do this. Some, they have an office admin that does all their positive response. So what that means is their field locators will go out each morning with all their printed off locators or locate requests, and they'll go out and they'll make a note on every locate. I marked it in the backyard. There's paint and flags there. This was all clear. Whatever the notes are on that paperwork, and then bring that back to the office, and then an admin will log in and do the actual positive response to the website through the portal. So that's one way of doing it, because you still have, 2 business days, not counting the day notification, to get that process. So if at the end of the day at 5 o'clock someone's just punching in all the locates, you're good, right? So there's one way of doing that response. Another way of doing the response is just your locator smartphone. They'll be able to pull up the browser. They can do all the response through that on their phone. Just depends on how technical your locators are. If they need to be paper guys, maybe bring it back to your admins. There's a couple ways around that. And talk to our member services team, and we'll make sure you get set up to make sure that you're handling getting this done, because we want this to work. The beauty of this whole entire thing is better communication between excavators and member companies. In my role as education outreach liaison, I'm an ambassador on behalf of our member companies to prevent damage. And I'm also an ambassador on our side of our excavators, because I want them to get paid and stay safe, right? You have a job to do, and I understand that. So if I can get it to where this communication is streamlined to a point where the excavator can know what companies haven't located prior to even going out to the site, then we want to get to that point. We want to be able to get to the point where you can have confidence in the locate process, and then have accountability on the locators. If they haven't responded, put in that second notice. That second notice will be that courtesy notification that, hey, XYZ company, you didn't make it in time. I need you out here within 5 hours, because that's when I'm going to start digging. So you have that opportunity there. Okay. And just a reminder, like I said earlier, excavators also have an opportunity to plan your work. You can give up to 10 business days notice that digging is going to take place within 14 calendar days. So you have almost a full month. You have 24 days to get a project complete from the time that you know you're going to start it. So keep that in mind. Communication is going to be far more improved with this mandatory positive response, and excavators have a record of all this documentation that they haven't had prior to November 1st, because it's been optional, not mandatory like it is now. So, There's good questions about emergency. We talked about that earlier. Just make sure it's an endangerment to life, health, of property, that it's not a new install, that it is justified because digging has to take place because someone's life or health is at risk or their property is at risk. Okay. And just a random example is way back when I started with OK1, I used to take phone calls as well. And I had a farmer call and let me know that he was calling an emergency request to replace his fence. Initially, I asked some questions because that didn't sound like an emergency to me. We have to justify it when we're putting in the ticket. I said, how is this an emergency? Could you wait, the 48 hours? And the farmer explained to me that his cattle was escaping and that's his property. So yes, there's an endangerment to property. So just remember the justification. Um, if it comes in kind of in that gray area, we may ask for some more justification to make sure that we understand where that endangerment is. And then once we know where that endangerment is, then the next thing to worry about is the justification on time frame. If you're going to take a few hours to get there, or you're waiting on a different crew, let us know that so we can give the member companies as much time as possible to get that area located. Um,
MG,
yeah,
Renee would like to know what happens if the locators are not completing the positive response part of the request on a consistent basis?
great question. The so when so like I said earlier, 5 hours before any project is going to be complete, they're going to the excavator is going to receive an email that says XYZ company did not respond, and they should have, right? So when you know they haven't been there, you can put in a second notice. I'm pulling back the curtain a little bit for you excavators on this. When a second notice is put in, it is a courtesy notice that they did not make the mark on the first attempt, and then B, this is where the curtain's being pulled back. That means there's an additional cost to that member company because another ticket went out to them. Okay, and I can assure you that now that the excavators understand that these second notices are a CYA move on your part, and you should totally use them. But B, a way that these member companies can have an opportunity to see the efficiency of their locates and their quality of their locates, and then it does affect their pocketbook. That they will do all they can to improve locating. If they say, man, in the last month we had 30 times in Enid where our locators didn't get a locate done in time, and that's costing us money, they will improve that locates in Enid. So use those second notices as a way to communicate back to the member companies where they need to improve. Okay. And so great question, Renee. I do encourage the use of the second notices so that you can have that communication back out to them. And of course, always talk to them as well.
Adam, on your question, you said the called-in area is going from 300 to 150. It's not the called-in area that's changing. It's the buffer on on our mapping. Can you show that to him again, MG?
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, Adam, what that is our dig site polygon. So, so initially, this is what it looks like right now when I take it. It's being put in today, right? You get off the phone with this. There's a 300-foot buffer around the called-in area. So, if your called-in area is bigger, then that 300 foot is in addition to the purple area in this example, right? So all we're doing is we're not reducing what the excavator is providing us. We're reducing what we do in addition to what the excavator is telling us. So now it'll drop down to 150 feet, and so anything outside of that would not receive a ticket. So in that example, that well would have been the old way, but not in the new way. Let's see. Someone asked a good question. A member company who is also the excavation company. Good news. If if you're sending your crews out to work on your underground facilities, they will more than likely not call in a second notice on you, right? So they go out and they go, okay, this is our lines, blah blah blah. And so the only thing that's still required of you is to close out that locate request when you do show up on the job to begin your work. And so you do need to make sure that you're planning your work in an efficient manner so that you're not showing up as not compliant by not providing positive response. If it's your job, this is where one of those weird things where I'm giving a suggestion, not a law, right? If it is your company's job that you're receiving a locate request on, you can respond to that locate request the day of. Hey, it's my stuff, yeah, close it. Like that's all you have to do is say lines are marked or whatever the case may be, because you can close it because it's already your facilities. If you're using a subcontractor or a third party, I strongly suggest still going through it like it's someone else digging near you. But if it's your own employees and you trust the process to where you can close out that locate request because it's your workers on your lines, then that would be an option for you to close out that locate request pretty much as soon as you get it, if you're confident in your process. But if it's not your workers, you definitely want to communicate with the excavator when it comes to that. So that's a good question. So I hope that helps out too much, or that does help. Um, Someone asked about a little bit more about the second notice fee. So second, third notices, all those courtesy notifications after the initial locate request time is over, does cost the member company. So um, like I said, if XYZ company missed 30 times in a unit where they should have been located before the work to begin date and time, that gives XYZ company the knowledge to say, okay, I've been billed 30 times, I need to improve our process, and I need to be able to avoid these second notices. Everybody's going to be able to see those second notices. They go out. The member companies can help, or like if the third party is being used, they can look at that QA in that area as well. So hopefully that helps out with the second notices. And let's see, great questions. Talked about updates. Someone asked, and it's a pretty general question about who their member services person is. Our member services is a team of 3 team members. So when you reach out to member services at oka11.org, they'll take you in queue and they'll help you out with your question. So if you haven't emailed them recently, let me know. I have your contact information. The person who asked the question, Kimberly, I will reach out to them on your behalf. But if anybody else just hasn't had communication with member services in a while and are starting to realize the importance of this positive response, shoot them an email. Make sure we get you registered. We want November 1 to be go day for all of us, right? If the sooner we get to 100% participation is when all of this communication is going to improve for everybody. So thank you, Kimberly, for bringing that up. Talked about that. I'm pretty sure we're clearing all these out. All right, yeah. So I'm not seeing any new questions. I'm going to scroll one more time all the way down.
Nikki's question, if we put in a survey request and contact the company, would they still be able to mark the site?
That will be up to them. That's a good question. I misread that earlier because I thought we covered it with the design survey request. So you put in the design survey request. We give you the list of companies that are in that area, and then you contact them directly. When you make that contact directly, then you'd work out the details of what you need. If, hey, all I need is your mapping, and they go, cool, here's my uh, uh, KMZ file, or you say, hey, I need paint and flies on the ground, then you'd have to work out those details with them. So I apologize that I don't have the answer for you because it's not something that's mandatory by law for them to respond for a design survey request, but that communication would have to be initiated by you, and what you're requesting would need to be facilitated by them. So you just have to work out the details. Hopefully, all of them are easy map questions. Someone asked, what is a member company? Cool. I apologize for not breaking that down. A member company is a owner or operator of underground facilities that receives locate requests to mark their lines. So municipalities, electric companies, water companies, oil and gas. So anybody who is receiving a locate request to go and mark their lines is a member company of OKA 11. These are great. Someone asked about exemptions for city and state utilities. Short answer, no. Public agencies do not have an exemption. Most public agencies do work with utilities directly. So they may have some deals worked out. Hey, you don't charge us to repair our stuff and we won't charge you to repair your stuff, and have an understanding. But as far as the law is concerned, the law says if you're digging, you have to call in a locate request, and if damages occur, you'll be liable for those repairs. So I know it's frustrating. DOT does a lot of work. Obviously, counties do a lot of work when it comes to road updates, grading, and stuff like that. But all those things, they are taking on the liability, and then, like I said, they usually work out the back end with those utilities in the area. So if you're not familiar with that, I would talk to your damage prevention team or your safety director and see how you're working with those public agencies in your area. But as far as just black and white law, they are required to call in a locate request. There isn't a exemption as well. Someone says if you have a high ticket demand and do not get a locate done by the work date, what's the response? So this comes back to that second notice. If XYZ company does not locate prior to the work to begin date and time, then the excavator who made that request has the option of putting a second notice. And that second notice is, like I said, a CYA move and courtesy ticket to let that XYZ company know that we are about to begin digging, and it's not a reset of 48 hours. And so communication is key. If XYZ company can talk to that excavating company and say, hey, we have your ticket. We'll be there on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, and we really apologize. Can you give us an extra day? Then there isn't a need for a second notice. There isn't a need for that communication to go back out if the excavator company agrees to that. The excavator company says, no, I really need to dig on Tuesday, then they may have to put in a second notice to show due diligence that they are putting in all the due diligence necessary to dig safely around those underground facilities. Renee, that is the question about the second notice fees. Shoot me an email. I can go into more depth on that. If anybody has a question about your ticket fees and how that works, you can go to our website under members, and you'll see here. Let me actually under members. You will see membership documents, and when you go into that, you'll see the fee schedule, and then your fee schedule will pop up, and you can go over like what type of company you are, what your tickets are, and the second notice is part of your per ticket fee. So hopefully that'll help you out. If you have any other questions, shoot me an email and I'll be happy to break that down. I didn't realize I was going to get as many of you riled up as I did. It is something to keep in mind, but it's something that is a very, very small percentage of your ticket fee when it comes down to it. And someone asked, although it is great practice, is it mandatory to call in a second notice? Unfortunately, no. But it is mandatory to show due diligence and that you're doing everything you can to dig safely around underground facilities. So if I see a telephone pedestal and XYZ telecom company didn't come out and locate, and I'm using heavy equipment within 5 feet of that pedestal, and I surprisingly hit something, I am not showing due diligence. And that will be easy for that member company to show that, hey, you didn't give me a chance and you dug without due diligence. Now, if you still see that pedestal and you're hand digging, you discover yourself and you dig safely, this goes back to what I said about I hate saying this out loud, if nothing happens, then nothing happens. That's still true, okay? But if something does happen, you have to show due diligence, And that's where the CYA move of a second notice is so important. Okay. And someone else asked if when a second notice goes out, is it just the company that didn't respond or all companies that get charged? It'll be all companies. That's the reason our membership works together on the damage prevention efforts. And so anytime a ticket is transmitted, any member company that's on that ticket is responsible for that service. And a lot of times, communication is the key. When you're working, we talked about earlier, I feel like I'm on a radio show today. Like I said earlier, with the gentleman who is both the excavator company and the member company. That's when communication comes in key, because you understand both sides. If you can communicate with the excavator and let them know what's taking place, and your timeline might be different than that mandatory 48 hours or where to begin date and time, you can avoid those second notices. You can work to improve your damage prevention just through communication. And as an excavator, if you can give that member company 4 days notice instead of 2, then you're also giving an opportunity for them to respond and not worry about that as well. So the communication, I know that I'm talking in a very utopian damage prevention world, but that's what if we took away all the legalese of the Damage Prevention Act, it's communication between our excavators and our members, and we want to keep excavators safe and get them paid for doing their job, and we want to keep our facilities working with no disruption of service, so that everything works for their consumers and their bottom lines. So great questions all the way around. I want to avoid those second notices as well. Right now, second notices are less than 2% of all of our tickets, okay? I brought them up as an example. I hope that nobody's just shooting out second notices all the time now, because hopefully the communication is there. But I do want to remind you of why that second notice exists, is to show due diligence in an area. So great questions all the way around. All right. I do believe we are caught up on questions, and we are coming up on an hour of a presentation. So for your time that I respect, if you have any other questions, if you have things that come up or very, very specific what ifs, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm here to help you out. I want everybody to be understanding of the new law updates and be on the same page. If you haven't already, go and find my podcast, Digging Deep. You can find that on everywhere podcasts are found. Just type in Digging Deep or Okie 811. You'll be able to find us. Our blog has plenty of information. I'm writing up an article currently about the design survey request to help you guys out. And then this webinar, as well as our podcast and plenty of other information, is on our YouTube channel. And that's YouTube. Just search for Okie 811. And like I said, if you have any questions or you need clarification on any of this, shoot me an email. I promise you I'm on your side, whichever side you are on. If you're one of my member companies or one of the excavators doing work, I want to help you. So just shoot me an email. It's education@okie811.org, and I'll be happy to help you out with any questions you may come up with. So with that, I thank you all for doing everything you are doing to provide safe excavation and damage prevention in the state of Oklahoma. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you, and talk to you later. Bye, everybody.